Hello and welcome to day 2 of the spring 2026 programming course with C Sharp. First, I want to kind of go over some reminders, housekeeping items. So, I know a lot of this material, can be confusing, especially for students. This is their first course in the application web development program. There's going to be some growing pains, right? You're going to have to get used to some things. This is your first course, just how ranking operates. You've got the inside ranking, all this stuff kind of gets thrown at you all at once, but, just hang in there. You just need to work through that and, things will get better as time goes on, right? Please send me, the next thing is please send me your GitHub username if you haven't already. So I will need to add you as a member to the Rankin Technical College GitHub account. So we're doing this a little different this semester. For the new students, they don't know any better on this, but the students who took this last semester, we're having to do this just a little bit different. So first I'll need to add you to that as a member, and then I will send you the information to go ahead and accept. Well, first you'll have to accept the invitation. You'll get an email for the invitation. You'll have to accept that. And then I'll send you a follow-up email as well that once you accept that invitation, then you can go ahead and access the classroom. Okay? Also wanted to mention, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, there's also videos on that channel for another course I'm teaching. So just don't want you getting confused between all these things that are on my channel and just the ones that are for this course, right? So the course playlist, which is also included on the Inside Rankin main page and in the syllabus, and I also believe I've sent that in email. Let me bring that up real quick. So that's here. This is the playlist. So obviously there's just 3 videos. I had the welcome video, installing Visual Studio 2026, and day 1, which I recorded yesterday, right? So them are the 3 videos, and obviously after today I'll have the day 2 video as well, okay? Computer specification requirements. So I wanted to kind of go over that a little bit. So on the main page on Inside Rankin, you've got the suggested computer specs for this course, okay? And actually it's more than just the course, really just for the application web development program. So I'm going to click on this. And I'm not saying that yours has to be, match this, or, maybe this is a lot better than what you currently have, okay? And I just want to let you know, especially because we're using Visual Studio 2026, it takes up a lot of computer resources to run that thing, right? And so, I've got a pretty newer computer, and I've got like 32 gigabytes and stuff. And usually RAM is one of those things that really help with something that's really very computer resource intense, like Visual Studio. And if if you're like got 8 gigabytes or even less than that, it's going to be kind of a challenge. So I'm just kind of bringing this up. I know it's investing in a computer is expensive, but I'm just kind of wanting to point this out that the better your computer you've got, you're going to need a lot of space on your computer. Plus, the memory is going to matter a lot, and just a newer computer, right? Also, if you got a Windows 11, that would be preferred as well. Actually, Windows 10 is no longer supported by Microsoft. So like when there's security updates, usually, Microsoft always sends out security updates to their different Windows versions. And so they won't be supplying that anymore. I think that October of 2025, that was cut off. So you won't be able to get access to security updates. So 11's the best. So just kind of wanted to point this out. And I'm not saying you have to have, something, something maybe a little less than this will work. I'm not saying, and I'm not really a computer hardware guy all that much. So, I'm not an expert at all of this, to be honest with you. I'm more on the software side. I'm more writing code and stuff like that. I'm more a user of the computer, right? Some people have a lot more knowledge than I do about the hardware part of this. But I'm just kind of mentioning that it's important to, the best computer that you can afford. That if you feel like you've got what you need now, that's fine. But maybe you should look into something a little more, a little more updated, a little more power to it, so to speak. And especially if you're just starting out this program, you plan to continue through. You're going to need something a little more powerful maybe than what you have. So you're just going to see how it goes with what you have, but just kind of want to point this out. Okay, it's kind of important. Okay, so I want to go ahead and review just a few things here from yesterday. Um, so you installed, as part of the environment setup, you installed Git, right? So I'm just going through this because we have all this Git stuff. Git this, Git that, all these different things that start with Git, right? So Git's the software that you install on your computer, right? And you're not really, you don't really run anything with Git, but that's what's kind of keeping track of all your file changes, right? It's keeping track of all your file changes within a repository. It doesn't track your file changes on your whole computer, right? It's got to be a GitHub project, right? It's got to be something. So when you went ahead and cloned your repository from your GitHub, right? From your GitHub repository that you got once you accepted the classroom assignment, right? When you clone that and so you have that locally on your computer, that's a GitHub project. So Git's going to go ahead and track all your file changes in that, right? It's not going to track file changes anywhere else on your computer, okay? So then we also have the GitHub remote repository, and we have our local repository. That's the one that's on our machines, right? And we have GitHub desktop. So here, let's just bring up GitHub desktop and go from there. So here's your GitHub desktop. So in here, basically, if you want to go, just kind of reviewing here, here's your current repository. So if you don't have that up here, you're going to have to clone your new repository. But in here also, so you can see where you're at, you don't want to click open in Visual Studio Code. And you may not even have this option unless you've already got Visual Studio Code installed. I'm not sure on that. Probably not. You might not see this. Might just be for anybody who already has Visual Studio Code installed on their computer. But you should have Show and Explore and View on GitHub, right? So when we show and explore, right, this is our local GitHub repository, right? This is our local GitHub repository. Anything you change in here, any file, anything you change in here, is going to reflect in your current, in here, in GitHub desktop over here, right? All your changes, right? Now I kind of did mention we've got this .git ignore, and you don't have to worry about what's all in here, but this is going to ignore a bunch of things because you're going to see when we start building some projects in here, Visual Studio Code projects, there's going to be a lot of files in there, and they're not necessarily needed for you to check in, okay? They're needed usually to run locally and stuff like that, but they're not needed to check in, right? Because you'll be, I'm going to show you how many there's going to be, and it's going to be substantial, when we get there. So that's the whole purpose of that, to just ignore certain things. It'll keep things a lot cleaner over here, okay? We used to not do that, and students, it was kind of a nightmare. They'd have all these different files over here, and so, yeah. So it makes things a lot cleaner. All right, so this is your local GitHub repository, right? And then if we click on View in GitHub, this is mine. This is for this course, my GitHub repository for this course. I kind of accepted it just as a student, just like you guys did. So this is your remote repository. So when you push things, all right, and you should check to make sure that things are out here. When you commit things and you push things, you should, kind of check that to make sure it's out here, because this is very important. Because at the, say, Monday morning, if you didn't commit anything, if there's nothing updated in here, and you also didn't do a written test, then you're going to be marked as absent for that previous week, right? Okay. And also just kind of wanted to mention, and later today, we're gonna work on the first lab. We're gonna work on that first part of that lab assignment, and we'll go ahead and push that out there. But just wanted to mention, remember, when you do have some files and you select them here, they're selected by default. And so when you go ahead and put the reason for your change in here, right, and you hit commit to main, when you hit commit to main, you also have to push it. Just because you hit commit to main, it's not going to go to your remote repository. You also have to push it. You should have a push button should come up over here on the right hand side once you do that. And then also you should see push up here. Okay. And when we finish that lab, we'll push that out there, and so you'll be able to see that. Okay. Yep. So I did. Yeah, I wanted to mention also. So if you haven't cloned your GitHub repository already, so if you go in here to this day one video, I'm gonna pause this. Okay. Well, it should, if you start here at the beginning by default. If you come down here, clone your repository, you click this, it's going to go to the exact spot where we clone the repository. Okay. So it'll go to that same spot where we clone the repository. I highly suggest that you watch this whole video from start to finish, because we covered multiple things in here, right? Especially new students, we covered, all the way from inside Rankin and the syllabus, etc. Okay. All right. So as far as today, the plan for today is I'm going to do a quick preview of views and settings in Visual Studio 2026. Then I'm going to walk through this week's lab assignment, the console apps, right? I'm going to walk through that, and I'll show you what I'm going to do for you. The first one, we're going to do the whole thing. I'm going to do the whole thing for you, and we can push that out there. The second one, I'm going to kind of show you a little bit what you need to do, but you'll have to finish that one. And what I think I'm going to do, the third one in there is kind of difficult. So what I'm really wanting to do, because I don't want to take up a whole lot of the class, this lecture for that, is I think I'm going to do a separate video just on that one. And then the fourth one in class today, I'll just kind of give you ideas on kind of getting started on that one as well. Okay. So the first one I'm going to do completely through. The second and the fourth one, just going to kind of show you. And the third one, I will do a separate video on that. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and lecture on chapter 2. And this is chapter 2 from the book. You should have the PDF file for that. Later today, after the course, after this lecture, I'm going to contact the bookstore and see what's going on with the book situation. But don't worry about that. But I'm going to go and lecture on chapter 2. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and complete the chapter 2 written test in class. So we're going to do that in class. So all you got to do is kind of follow along, and, you should have that completed rather quickly, following along with that, all right? And you could have that submitted. Okay. All right, so let's first go ahead and look at Visual Studio 2026. Bring that up. I don't think I have that up right now. All right, so I already have this on lab. I'm just going to open this up. I don't think there's anything in here. Yep. So this is just the basic folder. So first, I was just kind of want to show you some settings in here. Okay. So in here, if you go to what I did, I made some changes, and I'll show you. Oh, here, let me just. I made some changes, so well, I don't know why I'm bringing that up. I made some changes so that in the editor here, you'll be able to see a lot more, a lot bigger text for presentation purposes. And then also, I made some changes so these things are bigger. Now, you don't have to do this for yourself. It might be fine for you. And especially the bigger you make text, the less kind of things fit on the screen. I'm doing it more for presentation purposes. So when I present, you can see things easier. Okay. But I'm going to show you how you can kind of do that in here. Let me see here. So if I go up to the tools menu, so I go up here to, why is this not showing here? Tools menu. If I go up to the tools menu and select options. So I'm going to go tools, options. I'm sorry, I'm having some issues here. Tools, options. Then in here under environment, I can go down to more settings, fonts and colors. Okay. And it's kind of going to what I did earlier, but so settings for the text editor. This is why I changed this. You can change the kind of font you want, the size you want. And you probably don't want it as big as I have it. I just made changes for presentation purposes. Okay. And then here, text editor. Okay, so that's that. Then there's also settings for, let me see here. So that was for the text editor. And then trying to find the right thing here. Let me figure this out real quick here. I know there's a lot of stuff in here. It is kind of confusing, isn't it? Command window? No, I don't know. But I'll review it later. You probably won't be changing a lot of it. I think the important one really is for you guys would be the text editor, right? So the text editor window. Is the first one on the list. So this is your text editor. So whatever you change this to, your text editor is going to change that. Okay. And I'll look. I'm sorry. There's a lot of options and things have kind of changed with this new version as well. So I need to go through that a little bit. Now, a couple other things I kind of wanted to mention. So we have all these different windows here, right? Yours probably if you bring yours up, you're probably going to have different things than I have, right? And sometimes you end up closing things. So now I have things closed. You say, well, and this has happened with a lot of students in the past that you close something at some point and then it's not there and you don't know what to do. So all these different windows are, if you come up here to view, okay, they're all available to you. All right. So we had that Solution Explorer. I closed that window, Solution Explorer. You click on it. All right. It's right here. And actually you have this thing for pinning it. So if it's auto hidden, so now it's over here on the very far right hand side, right? If you pin this, it'll stay there, right? But if you close it, it's going to go away. So if you need to bring it back, even though it's pinned, you closed it. So there you go, bring it back. And so that will kind of work pretty much for all these different windows. Usually you want the output window down here as well. If you close this output window, all of these, right? So be careful what I'm doing here. Output window. So if you ever have a problem, and then when we start really working on forms, that's when we need like properties window. That's very important. And also toolbox. So I'll show you those as well. Okay. So next, let's go ahead and preview our lab assignment. Okay, so if you go out to the inside ranking, and for this, you click on the assignment for this, so this will come up, right? Do want to mention, especially for new students, so if you want to save this, right, you can either, you can look at it live within the browser, or I shouldn't say live, but, basically on the Google Drive, or if you want to download this computer, you can go ahead and click File, Download, and you can download this as a Word document, as a PDF document, okay? So different options on what you want to do there, right? So here are some different terms are kind of, we'll be doing some of these will be important within this lab assignment, okay? But, these are things that you're going to kind of learn and understand more as time goes on, right? But I'll point out where they're relevant within here, okay? So what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of get started on this, right? So here we've got 4 different labs, Lab 1, Lab 2, Lab 3, and Lab 4, okay? Like I said, Lab 1, I'm going to do we're going to do it completely right now, and so you can check that in and you'll be done with that. So here, let's just before that, I'm getting ahead of myself. So first, we really want to do is get things set up, right? So in your local repository on your computer, we want to create one solution, okay? And in your Chapter 2 folder with all 4 projects in it, please name your projects Lab 1, Lab 2, Lab 3, Lab 4, okay? And then it's just telling you when you're finished, commit and push your finished programs to GitHub repository. And I do want to mention, you can and probably should get in the habit of pushing things out, even if they're not completed. At least you've got something out there. At least you submitted something, right? You can make changes and submit it again, right? It's not like you have to wait until everything's completed, all right? So let's go ahead. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create one solution, and we're going to create 4 different projects: Lab 1, Lab 2, Lab 3, and Lab 4. Okay? It tells you what kind of your project names, right? It doesn't say solution name, so we'll just make up a solution name for that. Okay, so let me come back to, let me just close this and start over. All right. Did want to mention real quick here also. So, if you're having, if your computer doesn't have a lot of RAM, if you feel like you've got an older computer, one thing I would do, like when you're trying to work on assignments and that, since Visual Studio takes up, a lot of resources, I suggest that you kind of close other things down. Make sure you don't have a whole bunch of different programs open. Try to close things down as much as possible. You may even want to restart your computer, because sometimes your computer is holding on to things, and when you restart it, things kind of, even though might take a little while to load, it kind of loads, and you're starting kind of from scratch on that, right? As far as what's in memory. So kind of a tip if you're, having some resource problems, that might help out a little bit, okay? For right now, I'm just going to remove this from the list, and I am going to click on Create a New Project, okay? And then here, I want to search for, so obviously after you do some things, it'll show over here, but I'm going to go Solution. All right, and then here's a blank solution. So I want to select this, all right, and so this is what I want to do. Now here, I want to make sure that I'm in the right directory. Very important to be in the right directory here. And what did that say? Did that say put it in Chapter 2 or Chapter 3? I think it said chapter 2, didn't it? Let's look again. Create those. Chapter 2 folder. Right? So I'm going to do labs here, chapter 2, right? So you just need to make sure that you're in the right directory. This is your GitHub local repository under your name, your username, labs, and chapter 2. I'm going to select that folder. Okay. So let's call this my first solution. Okay. So the name of your solution is my first solution, or you can call it whatever you want there. And then we're going to hit create. Okay. And now you're going to have the solution over here on the right-hand side in Solution Explorer. Okay. The next thing we're going to want to do, so we've got 4 different labs, lab 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to right click here and we're going to do add, and we're going to add a new project. Okay. And then here we're doing all console apps, right? And I'm just going to do this even though it's right there for me, right? So console, so here's a different console apps. And if you recall, this is the newer way to do it. This is the older one. You want to do this newer one here, right? So we're going to select this one, okay? And we're going to call this lab 1. Hit next. We want to make sure that it's .NET 10.0, long-term support. Yes, that looks good. Hit create. And we want to make sure those 2 are unchecked, right? So there's our first one, okay? Now let's just do them all right now, okay? We'll do them all. Now we're going to go ahead and do that again. At that solution, we're going to do an add, new project. We're going to do console again, which is going to be this one here. We're going to do next. And in here, you're going to do lab 2. Hit next. Hit create. Now we've got 2. We've got 2 projects in our one solution. All right. We're going to do another one. Add new project. And here we're going to do lab 3. Hit next. Hit create. And then here, add new project. Same thing. Hit next. This is lab 4. Hit next and create. Okay, now we got all 4 projects. What you kind of want to do, kind of get in a habit though, when you do this, you want to kind of close things out so you don't have a bunch, so you get confused on which one is which one, because it's going to be called always program. But for a console app, it's always going to be program.cs. Okay, that's the file we're going to be editing. So we got all 4 of them. So we're just going to come here to the first one, and I'm going to click on that. And so here it is. This is just the basic console template, right? This is the template. So everything has a template. You choose your template. In this case, we chose the console app template, right? The newer version. So that's what we chose. That's the template we chose. So it doesn't put much in here, right? But here you don't have to worry. If you remember yesterday, I showed you how, before you used to have to have a main method and a namespace and all that. It had much more code in here just for a basic, right? But in later versions, you don't have to do all that, right? Big benefit. Okay. So next thing we want to do is let's go ahead and look at, we've got everything set up in that from that point of view. So now we're on lab 1 here. So we're going to write a C# console program that converts distance from miles to kilometers. Okay. So we need to declare a constant named kilometers per mile, which holds the number of kilometers in a mile, which is 1.6 kilometers per mile. Then we need to prompt the user for a distance in miles, right? And then we need to display the distance in both kilometers and miles. Okay, for example, 3.0 miles is that many kilometers. Okay. So let's go look. We're declaring a constant name. So what's a constant, right? So if we go over here real quick, this console apps fundamentals, right? So, and this can help you with things. So we kind of go down here. What is a constant? A constant is a name value that cannot change after it is initialized. Constants are declared using the const keyword. So we know we're going to be using a const keyword and must be assigned a value immediately. And actually, kind of, I don't want to say cheating, but here's kind of the answer already for this, right? Believe it or not. So there we go. So that's what we're actually going to start with here. Okay. So here we don't want to keep any of this. Okay. I got to bring up something over here. Get my windows situated for a second. All right. So now we have our kilometers per mile, right, of 1.6. Okay. And this is just showing you out you've assigned this, but you haven't used this, right? It's kind of just more of a warning, right? If you click this, it'll tell you is assigned but never used. You know, it would still work. The program would still work, but I'm just, you know. So the next thing is we need to do is we need to prompt the user, right? We need to prompt the user. So first we want to write a line of something, right? We want to write a line to that console, right? That when we run this, we want to have a line that's going to tell them what they need to do. So we're going to do console dot write line. And so if you, for these suggestion things, right, you can just go ahead and when it, you know, if this is what you're wanting, you can just hit tab, right? I had it hit tab twice, tab for the console, tab for that, right? And then I'm going to enter the text I want to enter. Enter the distance, all right, in miles. Put a colon, put a space just to make it look a little nicer. And you also need to make sure whenever you have a beginning quote, you need always have to have an end quote, okay? When you have a beginning parentheses, you always have to have an end parentheses. So we're going to end the parentheses, and we always want to have a semicolon at the end. So we have a semicolon as well. If you don't include that, yeah, it's going to complain, right? It's going to complain. All right, so we did that, right? So the next thing we want to do is we want to read from the console, right? So this is going to put that on, when we run it, it's going to put that on that window. But then when the user enters, right, the number of miles, we want to be able to read that, right? So what we're going to do next here is we're going to create. Now, when anything that gets read from that console is always going to be a string. It's always going to come as a string, right? So, and sometimes, and so when we got numbers, we'll have to convert them and stuff. And we won't do that on this statement, but we're going to do the next statement after this one. But everything's going to be a string. So from the console, so we're going to do string, okay? Input, that's what we're receiving. You can call this whatever, right? These variables, this variable you create here, this is developer created, whatever you want to call this, right? Whatever you want to call this. Same thing actually with this, right? These are developer created variables, right? These const, right? That's, and double, them are C# related stuff, the programming stuff. This is the type. Double is going to be a type of a number, right? It's going to have decimal places, right? A double has decimal places. If we would have put this as an integer does not. Integer is just a single number, like 5 or 10, right? It would be an int if it was just one single one. But since we have a decimal point here, we want to use double, okay? For this, we want to use string, right? And put whatever you want to call this, right? Then we're going to do console dot read line. So it's suggesting something. So I hit tab here. It's just going to go to the end. That was the first time. And then if I want to continue with that, which I'm fine with that. I like that, right? I'm going to do that. But you can see here, this has got a little green mark, and here's another kind of a warning thing. This would work, okay? This would work, but I'll show you actually how to make this go away, okay? So this is just basically saying, though, it's possible that this thing could return a null, okay? And nulls can become problems in programming languages because I'll show you, in the future, you'll learn a lot more about that. But, sometimes when you return nulls and then you try to do other things with that, you can have problems, right? So, and a null could come because you didn't really enter any data, right? So one way to take care of that, to make this go away, right, is use like it's a double question mark, and you're basically saying, if this is null, return an empty string. Okay, now that you did that, it's green, right? I mean, it's not green anymore. Green went away, right? It's not a warning anymore. We still have our warning about this up here, but that's fine, okay? Because we're going to be using that here in a minute. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, so here, I guess I'll put a couple comments. So this is how you put a comment also. This is one way to do a comment. If you just got one line of comments, if you got a whole bunch of lines of comment, you do it like this. Oh, I'm sorry. And then you have to end it like this. So like, let's say you had a whole bunch of comments, multiple lines of comments you want to put in here. This is how you write. This is how you would do it for multiple lines of comment. If you just want to do one line, you just do like that. Okay. And so we're doing what? We're writing. We're creating a line, to display, right? So we're going to display this in console, right? We are going to read this input from console. All right. And now from there, what we're going to do is, let's see. Now what we want to do is, now we've got our input, okay? And hopefully you entered a number, hopefully the user entered a number, right? So when they enter a number, we're going to be doing a conversion with this lab assignment, right? Let's take another look at our lab assignment here real quick. Did I lose where I was on that? Yeah, I guess I overdid this. So what we're doing is we're reading some data in, the number of miles, and so we're prompting distance in miles, and then we're having to calculate, right? We're having to calculate how many kilometers based on the miles that get entered, right? So we're going to be doing some calculation on that. So since we're doing some calculation, we can't do a calculation with a string. String's just a bunch of, you have to change the format of that to do a calculation. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do what's called a double, right? Just like we had up there at the top, right? But this is not a const, right? A const is for only a constant, right? This isn't a constant. This can change. So miles equals, and we're going to do a convert to double input, right? And you could just hit the tab to select that. It was kind of helping you, all right? Help is always good, right? And then the next thing we want to, so now we have our miles in a number format, right? We got miles in a number format. Took it from a string, read it from the console, put it in a string, right? And then we went ahead and now you can actually take all of this and drop this right in here, right? But let's do it this way, a little easier to understand, right? For right now. Sometimes you can combine statements and stuff, right? So now we have miles, which is a double. It's a number, right? So now what we want to do is we want to know what our kilometers are, right? So we're going to do double kilometers equals convert to double input. No. So sometimes the suggestions aren't going to help you. What we're going to want to do, we not want to multiply our miles, right? So we're going to do equal sign. We're going to multiply our miles, right? And so for multiplication, what do we do? Here it's suggesting a division, right? That's a division. We want to multiply. So, sometimes these suggestions aren't always going to help you. So we want to multiply that by our kilometers per mile that we defined up here. Okay? All right. So now we have our kilometers. So all we need to do now is what? Console.write. We have to display it. We've got our miles. We want to display our miles. We want to display the kilometers now because we've already calculated that by miles times the kilometer per mile. Okay. And then so in here, what we're going to do is what's called interpolation. So we're going to use a $sign here. This helps to be able to use variables right within here, right? And then we're going to put a quote, okay? And then we're going to use what's a curly brace and put in miles. And then we're going to end that curly brace. So this will actually take this variable and put it right in here, okay? Because everything in here on a right line has to be a string, okay? Just like this was a string to start out with. When you do this, it has to be a string. And the way to put variables in here is by doing it like this, okay? So we got that, and then we're gonna put miles here. Nope, I'm not happy with what it's doing there. Sometimes that doesn't always help you. Miles is, and then we want to put kilometers in here, right? So we're going to put kilometers in here. Right? And always remember, everything's case sensitive, right? So if it's something's lowercase, uppercase, if you're using different cases, you need to make sure that it matches. If this doesn't match this, it has to be the same, right? Or it won't work, right? And then we're going to put in kilometers right here. There we go. And then at the end of this, so we've got our beginning quote and our end quotes. We're good there. And then, I just clicked it here to get to there, right? Use your mouse sometimes, right? Clicked it to get there. Or you can use your end key, right, on your keyboard. But we've got a beginning parentheses. We have to make sure we have an end parentheses. So we have an end parentheses there and a semicolon. Okay? Now, another thing is good to add. And in the past, some students, for some reason, I don't know, configuration stuff. So when you display something in the console, sometimes it won't wait and it just kind of all of a sudden displays and it goes away. So the way to prevent that from happening, I'm not having a problem how mine's set up, but I have seen it happen before, and sometimes it doesn't always make sense. So, but on some students, so you can do this, and this is going to prevent your window from appearing and then just like executing real fast and then closing, right? So that will prevent that from happening. Okay, so it can't hurt. This ain't gonna hurt it. For me, I haven't seen this problem. Okay. Now, one thing I do want to mention now is that you'll see this little star up here. So that means it's not saved, right? It means it's not saved. So a couple ways to save things. You can hit the Control S key. That's kind of my preferred way that I've done over the years. You hold down Control key on your keyboard and hit S. Or you can do File. And you can save this one. That's really the only thing. Or just save all, right? And just save everything. So this time, let's just go ahead and do a save all. So now it's saved. You see that little asterisk is gone. So you want to make sure you do that so you don't accidentally forget to save something. Okay. We could actually try to execute it before then. It would still, it'd still work. Okay. So the important thing up here though, so we've got 4 different labs, right? 4 different projects we created under our solution. So you need to make sure we're at the right one. All right. So we're at the first one. By default, it's going to go to the first one. But when we start doing some other ones, we need to make sure we change this. All right. So we're doing the right one. So I'll always check that. I do it all the time. I end up firing up the wrong one when I got multiple. So you always got to make sure you're in the right one. I'm going to go ahead and click this now. All right. And it's going to say enter the distance in miles. So I'm going to do 20. I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to tell me that 20 miles is 32 kilometers. Okay. And you just kind of hit enter a couple times to close this out. Okay. What did I want to mention? So, important thing. I probably should have mentioned this earlier. We wrote our code, no issues found, right? We fixed the, these were just warnings. We didn't see any red errors, right? But, if you do something wrong, right? Let's say we just did that, right? Now we've got an error here, right? Before we seen a warning message under this one because we weren't using that, but eventually we used it and that went away. The other warning message, and like I said, the warning messages aren't going to prevent it from working, okay? Generally, unless, you didn't do something you're supposed to do, right? But for the most part, if, it's just a warning message, the application will run without, because actually behind the scenes, what this is doing is C# is a programming language. It's a statically typed programming language that has to compile from one version to another. I think I know I mentioned this yesterday. So C# has to, so for C# to work, it has to compile from a human format into a compiled version. Okay. And within this Visual Studio, it's automatically doing that. You don't have to worry about it, okay? I will show you later on in this course how we can actually take something and we'll show you how it actually kind of compiles it and that outside of this, just, just to show you how that kind of works, because there is benefits and reasons to doing that as well. But for your purposes, basically when you sit there, this says build, right? When you click this button, it's building this, it's compiling it and everything else. Usually the first time it runs, once you create something, it's going to take a little bit longer. Once you have it built and right, it's going to go a little quicker. All right. Here, I do want to mention something else. So I entered a number that came out very, as far as I think I entered 20 and it came out to, a perfectly rounded number. But if I enter, say, like say 23 here and enter, so it's going to, it's using a double here. It's showing all kinds. Now we can format that. We can change that. Okay. We can format that. And we're going to learn a little bit more about formatting here. But for this lab, it's okay. Okay. I'm good with this. If you do this and check it in, you're going to get full credit for this part, for this first project. Right. Okay. So we have this here now. I did want to show you here. I want to see if this works for me. No, I can't do it. Oh yeah, open in File Explorer. Just grabbing anything here. Actually, I'm gonna go up. So what it did here for this lab, it created these different things. All right. When we created that project, it creates this. Okay. And I've got Notepad++. So I'm going to just add, I'm not really going to edit this, and you really shouldn't edit this, but when I hit edit, we're just going to be viewing it, okay? Let me grab that, put it over here in a different window. All right, here, let me just bring this over here. So here you've got this is it. So this is important. That needs to be checked in, and it's all part when we bring up GitHub Desktop. We're gonna this file will still be in here, this project file, but this says .NET 10.0. So this just tells it some basic config information that's important. Okay. And then this is the file we right here in the background, right? Visual Studio that we created. Now we also have these other folders, right? These were generated. This was generated by us compiling it, right? Building it and compiling it. This all happened, right? You can see the time here, 9:32, right? So these actually gets created from the beginning, right? But there's other things that'll be in here that will have a different date and time. But so like right here, that's a little later, right? So, but you have all these things in here, and you don't have to worry. I'm just kind of showing you this for your own purposes. So lab one, if I right click on this and go properties, all right? There's 28 files. There's 28 files in this, right? But we don't want to, and that's why I talk about we use that .git ignore. It's going to ignore a lot of things. We don't want all this stuff to check in because that's too much clutter. It's not needed, right? Now when I grab your code that you checked in, when I build it on my local machine to grade your homework, it's going to build all this stuff itself. It's going to build this stuff when I run this within Visual Studio to grade your homework assignment. So that's kind of how that works. Okay. So let's go back now. So we've completed that lab. Let's go back to GitHub Desktop here. And you can see, remember that lab one had what? Oh, well, we got lab two. So we got some basic stuff here. We can check this all in, but we don't have to because we haven't really worked on this. So either or, you can check all this in right away. But what I'm going to do is just for this one, why not? I'm going to unselect these. Oh, you do need to make sure you do your solution. So you got your solution file, but it might include some other stuff in there. I'm kind of thinking through this a little bit. Sorry. Let's just check all of these in. Not that it really matters all that much. Okay. So here we've got all these files, right? We've finished lab one. Lab two, this is just going to be that template thing, right? The hello world in here. And then this one's going to be a hello world, right? But this one is our completed assignment, right? Here it is right here. You click on it, you can see it. Over here was just the right line, right? But this is our completed assignment. So here we're going to go ahead and complete it. You can do what you want here, but it's a good idea to put something somewhat descriptive. Completed lab one. All right. Oh, one, not two. And then we hit commit our files to main. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and push origin, or you can, for some reason, if it's ever not here, you can go up here and push origin. But just remember, just because you committed to main, it's not out there in your remote repository out there on the internet, right? On the website, right? Not on the GitHub website yet until you push it. So I'm going to push this. Okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and click this. Usually there's a delay. It's pretty awfully quick though, most of the time. And let's view on GitHub. And if you already have it open, sometimes you have to refresh it. Here, completed lab one. All right. If you already have this open, you can always just refresh it. Because if you have it open, it's not going to automatically refresh it when that happens. You have to forcefully refresh it, just to let you know that. But if it's not open and you opened it, there you go. So there you go. There's completed lab one. You can open this up. Here's chapter 2. Here's my first solution. Click that. Here's your solution file. Here's all your labs. Obviously, like I said, this is the only one you completed. The other ones have just the hello world in it, right? But there you go. So you're a fourth of the way done with the lab assignment already, okay? So next one is we want to write a console program that calculates the average grade for a student. Okay. I'm not going to do this whole thing for you, but I'm going to give you a bunch of hints on doing this. So I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to close this one. Okay. Especially when you're doing multiple, because you'll get confused, or I do. I get confused. So I'll go here. Okay. I'm going to click on this. Here's our template window. All right. We're just going to get rid of all that. We don't need that anymore. I'm going to hit Control S to save, just to save it. All right. So the next thing we want to do on here is we want to read what we're trying to accomplish here. Again. So we're going to write a C# console program that calculates the average grade for a student. So it's going to prompt the user for 4 test scores. All right. So we're going to have one of those write lines like we did. Then we're going to do a read. Then we're going to do another write, and we're going to do a read. Right. So we're going to do 4 of those. We're going to get all 4 of those. All right. And then we want to what? Display the average. We'll display the average. It's going to look like this. So we're going to do a write. All right. We're going to read whatever the user puts in there. All right. And then here's the average of the 4 test scores. Okay. So this shouldn't be too bad for you. I know you're going to have to do a little bit on yourself on this one. Okay. So let's go to back to Visual Studio. And in here, we want to do what? We're going to prompt and read 4 scores, right? So it's always good to use comments when possible. And read. Prompt and read. 4 scores, right? So we want to do a console.write. Having some issues here today. Console dot write line. Hit tab once, hit tab again. Put in a quote, right? And then we want to enter test score 1. Make sure you end your quote, end your parentheses, and put a semicolon, right? So actually, we're going to do this 4 times. So I'm actually doing this all for you, and I wasn't planning on doing it all for you. So there's that. Let's do that, okay? Let's do that. Move them down a little bit, get a little spacing here. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And so here on this one, we're going to do a double. Because we might do like 70, 85.5, right? We may have a decimal place. So we're gonna do that, okay? So here's score 1. So double score 1 equals, and what we can do is we're gonna do a little combination thing stuff here, okay? We're gonna do we'll go ahead and try that way here. We're gonna do a convert. Okay, we're going to do a convert to double dot to double. Okay, and we're going to do a console. We're going to accept this suggestion here. We're going to read that line from there. Okay, there we go. And so basically, all you need to do is copy this 4 times, or 3 more times. We're going to change this though to score 2. So like I copied that. Well, this is complaining. Why? Because you can't have you can't have a variable with the same name. You're redeclaring a variable with the same name, right? So, but we're going to change this to 2, right? So that's the second one, right? So, and then here we're going to do the same thing. here we'll do the same thing as well. Now that I made all my fonts real big, less fits on the screen. That's the bad thing about that. Okay, so there we go. And then after that, so I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to make a comment on what you need to do here, okay? You need to calculate the average of the 4 test scores, right? So make this also a double, right? Average. And then I'm not going to tell you what to put after this. And then you need to add everything else after this. Okay? You need to add all these, and what do you do for average? How do you determine an average of 4 numbers, right? So you need to come up with the equation to do that, right? And then after that, so I'm just going to get rid of this. And then after that, you want to go ahead and display the results. The result, right? So this is where you do that same thing we did like before, where we kind of did the console.write line. So I'm going to show you a little bit here, but I'm not going to finish it. And remember, we use the $, right? So this $'s not like the $, like the currency $, right? It's just a special character that C# uses. And by you using that, anything within these quotes, right? Anything within these quotes that you can put a variable in here. So you're creating a variable here that's going to calculate the averages. Then you're going to use that variable, right? You're going to have some text here, this average, this average of the, test scores, right? This is the average of the test scores, whatever. And then, you're going to use whatever your variable that you created up here, you're going to put down here, right? Just kind of like what we did at the last lab. Okay? So you take care of that part. And then also, you might as well just go ahead and, do this, keep the console open. It's not really needed anymore, but I'm going to look into that a little more if we really should be even doing this at all. But here's this console.read key. Hit tab to accept it, right? And so you just need to kind of do this. I gave you a lot here. You just need to calculate the average and display the results, right? So that shouldn't take you very long there. Then once you do that, right? This will actually work. There's no errors in here, right? There's no errors in here. So actually, we run this. We'll enter stuff. It's just never going to calculate the average, right? No. See, I made that mistake already. So here, this was lab 2. Lab 2. See, I do that all the time. You have to come up here and click lab 2. I was wondering where did the miles come from? You have to click lab 2 here, then click this. So this is going to execute that one. So it took a little bit longer than the other one because it had done that initial compile and building. Once it does that build and compile stuff the first time, so when I close this here and I do it again, it should be quicker. See how much quicker that was? So here I'm going to do 85. And it's going to ask for another one. It's going to ask for another one. But we're not. I stopped, right? I didn't complete the code. That's why it's going to be like that, right? So finish that up. And once you finish that up, so right there, as long, you created everything in the same directory, that's the best thing of how you have this set up. If it works for one, so this should be good for uh, GitHub Desktop. So if I pull up GitHub Desktop, same thing, because I edit that one, right? We already had those other things. The solution there, we didn't change the solution. We didn't change anything else. This is the only thing I was editing, right? I could check this in right now. Okay. But I didn't complete this, so I'm not going to. All right. Okay, so we're done here with lab 2. So next thing we want to kind of do is, let's go back to our document here. So like I mentioned earlier, for lab 3 is kind of a little tricky just because, well, some a little bit more logic here on what you need to do, okay? So, and also we're building this table out just like this. And this can, there's some special functions you need to do to complete this. So I'm going to create just a separate little video later because I didn't want to take up a lot of time here because I want to get through everything, within our kind of our lecture time period for you to also include the lecture for chapter 2 and the written test. So, but I am going to go ahead right here and just give you hints on this one. So this one shouldn't be too bad. This is lab 4, is a car rental company, charges $100 per day, plus 50 cents per mile. So we're going to write a program that prompts a user for a number of days and miles driven, and then displays the total rental fee. Okay. So let's go back to Visual Studio. And always remember, especially when you're doing something like these labs, when you got multiple projects for a solution, close the last one. Okay, and then I'm just double clicking on that, right? Get rid of all of this. All right, let me see here. Didn't mean to do that. Okay. So we're going to have a rate per day, and then we're going to have a rate per mile, right? Oh. Get a little click happy. So I'm just gonna, so whenever you do, you come back, you can just kind of click on that and you go back to where you were, okay? So I'm kind of glad that happened actually. So here, so we're gonna have a rate per day. So on here, what we're gonna do is we want to define our rate constants. So we're going to have what? We're going to have do doubles on these as well. So double, and we're going to do rate per day here. And we want to do it to be equal to 100. I believe that's what the lab asked, right? And then you want to do the same thing. So I did that first one there, and so, but you're also going to want to do one for rate per mile here, right? So you want to do the rate per mile. This one was rate per day. You also want to do one for rate per mile, right? So on the lab assignment, what it said, 50, right? 50 cents for rate per mile. So you're going to do a constant, a double rate per mile of 50 cents, right? Right there. So I didn't really do it, but okay. So then you're going to prompt. You're going to do a prompt for days here. Let me just change this. Define, rate. Define your constants. Rate per day. And rate per mile. All right. And then here you want to prompt for days. So you're going to prompt, just do a, console.write, right? Just like we did on all these other things, enter the number of days rented, right? And for days, what you're going to do, I'm just going to kind of show you this. What you're really wanting to do for days, you're going to prompt, and then you're going to read, do a console read line, right? For your console read line, this is kind of what you're going to kind of do a little bit different, because days is we're going to do an integer, right? So that's just a number, number of days, right? We don't need a double there. So we're just going to do an integer. So just be a number. And we're going to do equals. And so when you read something from the console, always remember that's coming as a string. So you're going to have to convert it, right? So we're going to do a convert. We're going to do a convert. And what kind of, usually how you do it for an integer is you do and we'll talk about this more in the future. I'm just kind of doing enough so you can get through the labs. So we're going to do 2 int 32, right? I think that's right, 2 int 32. And then we're going to do console. Console.readline. Just like that. Okay? So that's what you're going to do. You're going to prompt for the days, right? So you do your console.write first, and then you're going to do a read line. You're going to convert that to an integer and store that into days variable, right? Then you're going to do the same for prompting for miles, right? I don't know if what I'm doing actually makes things more confusing or not. So you're going to do the same thing. So you're going to do a console. I'll just start them. So you're going to do a console.write, right? Just like we've done for other things. So you did a console.write here, and then you prompt it for your days. And then you're going to do another console.write to prompt for the miles, right? And for the miles, you can just do the, you can just do the, do it as a double, right? Because you might have 2.5 miles, right? So here you want to do a, double for the miles. And then convert. And here you do what? Convert. You're going to convert to double. Right? And then you're going to do, so you're going to be doing convert to double, just like we did on the other lab, right? Look at the other lab we did. We're going to do a convert to the double for this one, for the miles. We're going to convert to the double, and you got to do your console.readline here as well, right? So you're prompting, you're going to read the data, you convert it. So you're going to have an int days here. Here you're going to have a double miles here, right? Then you need to, after that, you need to calculate total. And if you have any problems with this, it's fine. I'll help you. It's not like I'm doing this. So, you start working on this, you have a problem, just let me know. We'll get together in a meeting. We'll kind of go through what's going on. If something's wrong, it's not working. I can do that for labs, okay? I cannot do that for the hands-on test. The hands-on tests are kind of a different animal, so to speak, that you're kind of, you're responsible for that yourself, and I can't help you with the coding of that. But for labs, I can help you, okay? I just don't want to give you everything. Once you kind of work on some of this yourself. So here you're going to calculate the total. So here you're going to have a total fee, right? Do a double total fee here, right? So you want to do a double total fee. And then you want that, you're going to take your days, right? Your days that you got from your reading the console. You're going to take your days and multiply that by your rate per day that you defined at the top, right? And you're going to add that to your miles, the miles that you got when you prompted, and multiply that by your rate per mile, right? So you're going to multiply both of those, right? And then add those together, right? Add those together. And then you're just going to go ahead and do a right line at the end. Okay. You're going to do a right line at the end. And something a little different. Let me just show you on that. So let's say you have one called total fee. Obviously, I don't have it defined. But let's say you called it total fee when you did your multiplication and your addition. If you do this like this, this is for currency. Okay. So this will display as currency. Okay, so this is kind of the same thing we did with, start with the dollar sign, curly brace for the variable. But if you have a colon, and you can use some certain formattings, and if you do a C like that, it will be for currency. Okay. So I'll show you your calculation here.
It is easy though.
So for total fee, you're going to have days times rate per day, okay? And then miles. So the days is what you got from your console.read, right? Up here, you're going to be doing the same thing for your miles, right? And then you're going to, use parentheses to keep it together. So you're going to be multiplying that by rate per mile that you define up here at the top. That I removed those before, but here's your rate per day, here's your rate per mile. Multiply those, add them together, there's your total fee, drop that in here, make sure you use C for currency. Okay, so that's all I have on these labs. So I'm kind of making this one a little more difficult for you. I'm sorry, probably confused things and helped here, but hopefully it'll help you at least a little bit. Kind of show you here, this is total fee. Basically, all you got to do is get your days from the console, get your miles from the console, define these as your constants at the beginning, all right? And then multiply them together, add them together, and you got your answer, right? So really shouldn't be too bad. You should be able to make that through there. If you don't, if you have problems, please contact me. No problem with helping, okay? So next, we're just going to go ahead and look at the chapter 2 for the wind forms. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and go through chapter 2, how to design a Windows format. So for this lecture, I'm going to go through this. I'm not going to be in this PowerPoint very much, actually, because most of it is actually how to do stuff within Visual Studio. So I'm going to be doing the stuff in Visual Studio much more here, okay? So we're going to go through that, and I just did want to mention, so the chapter 2 and 3, like what we're going through, doesn't really line up exactly with like our prompts we're doing, our assignments, which are basically the console apps. All right, but we will eventually. You're going to be doing a lot more window forms than you're going to be doing in console apps, right? So we're just we're doing these console apps. It's a little simpler to do, and then we're kind of learning as we go along some of the window form stuff. But coming next week, we're going to start hitting up on some of these window forms apps as well, right? And the test will be based on the test for this week. Chapter 2 will be based on window forms, right? Which I'm going to be doing in class here shortly. So, okay, let's get started here. So I'm going to be skipping a lot of things. So we're going to just go back over here, and we're just going to create a new project, okay? We're going to create a new project. All right, so let me bring up Visual Studio here again. And we're going to create a new project. And this time we're not doing a console app, we're doing a WinForms. So we're going to do Win here. And so different ones come up here, right? We know we want to do C#, right? Okay, so actually we're going to go ahead and choose this first one in here. Okay, this is the newer one. This is an older one. Okay, this is the one that's in parentheses. This is the older one. This is the one we want to do. Okay, if you kind of look down on this list, you'll see other things in here, right? Library, control library. We're not doing that. We're not doing a class library, right? We're doing a window forms app. We're doing a, based on C#, we're doing window forms app. This is the latest version, okay? So we're going to do that. So I'm going to hit next here. And I'm just going to leave this here, that for now, okay? By default, it's going to put the solution project in the same directory. That's fine. Just going to call it the same thing. So I'm just going to hit next. Framework, we want to use the .NET 10.0, and I'm going to hit create here. Okay. So hopefully this won't take too long. Now I do want to mention, because I was playing around yesterday, because Visual Studio 2026 is kind of new, so it's kind of different than what I've done in the past a little bit. So one thing is, if you've got like a virus scan running on your computer, that kind of has caused problem for me with executing this, and it wants to quarantine files and everything. So if you have a problem with that, you might have to do a little research based on what kind of virus scan software you're using. You're going to have to add it as an exclusion, the folder, so it ignores that. So just ping me if you have that kind of a problem. I had that problem myself, so let me know. But as you can see here, some different kinds of files were created for this one, right? Different things were created. And so this is kind of the editor. This is the visual editor, okay? Now, we're wanting to do some other things in here too, so that we didn't do in a console app, right? We're going to be dragging different controls on here and doing different things. We're going to be changing names of things on here because this is kind of a visual, okay? This is a visual editor where we don't put text in here. We're dropping things in here. We're going to change the value of things in here, right? This is kind of just for like for design purposes. But here we're wanting some special tools, right? That's not shown right here in our group, right? So we're going to go up here to view. One of the most important ones is a toolbox. We want to click this toolbox down here, come all the way down. It's about little past halfway down. We click on toolbox, okay? So we're going to be using some of these tools, okay? So this is where you can do a button, a label, all these different things, okay? And then also, what's another important one for creating WinForms app is the properties window. We want to, that it's going to come over here and it's going to get dropped down here on the right-hand side under our solution. So go up here, view, and I think it's going to go kind of all the way down here to the end. Here's a properties window, okay? Or you can hit, once you get used to some of this stuff, you can bring this stuff up, by using the keys, right? So it's F4 or whatever. So I'm just going to click that, and here's our properties window, okay? So mine might look a little different. I made my fonts easier for presentation purposes for all these areas, which I kind of forgot exactly how I did that. But I'll mention that again probably next lecture again. I need to review how I did that for these different boxes. I know how I do it for the editors, but so okay, but we got this now. So and if one thing that kind of happens a lot, and I kind of already mentioned this earlier in the lecture today, accidentally closing things, right? If you what happened to this, what happened to that, right? You just come back up here and go view, and then come back here and click toolbox again, view, right? Click your properties window. All right. So I want to grab, I'm going to do this one that's in our presentation. So where's the final thing? I'm gonna just have this my own thing. So I'm gonna kind of do it exactly like this. Okay. So let me bring this over here. And actually, we're not gonna do a completely working one. This is kind of like stage one of creating a form on how to create these labels, how to create these text boxes. Okay. How to create these buttons. All right. We're not going to cover all of that. Okay. We're just gonna cover some of that. Okay. Uh, I mean, we're going to cover just putting this here. We're not going to cover how to actually calculate things, all right? Or do the code that's behind it, so to speak. Okay, so let me grab this again. I'm sorry. Let me move this over so I can have that to look at. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is so up here you got form 1, right? So this is the text for form 1 here. We're going to change this. So I'm going to change this to invoice total. Invoice total. All right. I hit enter. Boom. That changed that to invoice total now up there. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is drag a label over here. Okay. There's different ways to do this. You can double click this. Okay. And that'll put it up here. You can, I think you could select this and then click over here, right? That's one way. That's a second way. And then there's another way where you can just drag it. And I guess, used to dragging things. So I just got to do that a lot, So I just dragged it over there. And then actually, once you get something over here, so for that invoice total thing, right? We've got 4 different ones: subtotal, discount percent, discount total, right? So here, another thing you can do is you can just copy this. You can drag it 4 times, or you can just copy this, right? Hit like Control V to paste it. There's the second one. You can do it here. I'll just do it 3 times. It puts them all together though. So there's like 3. There's the third one. There's the second one, right? Now, it kind of snaps in place, depends on where you put it. You kind of see how those little guides come. It helps helps you kind of snap it in place to keep things lined up a little better, right? So I've got my labels, and then I also want what? The other things is I want text boxes. These are called text boxes, right? These other ones. So I want these text boxes as well. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to do a text box. I'm going to drag that over here. I'm going to be putting that like over here. I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna put 4 of those as well. Okay. There's my second one, and you see it kind of helps you line those all up. It has those guides. It kind of helps if I do the right thing. Third one, we'll clean it up. It's a process where you kind of change things around a little bit. Okay. So for our first one, what we're going to do is what we want to call our first one subtotal, right? Our first label. So I click on this label. And we come down to label here, text. And I'm going to do subtotal. Okay. And then just hit the enter key, right? I put it down here in the properties window. Okay. Hit enter, and there it changed. Now I click on this one, it's going to change here in this property window. Okay. Now I come down here to label 2. You don't want to, you don't want to leave these default, and especially there's more than just names here. There's property names as well as just label names, and when we're really you want to make sure that you got distinct names and you don't use any of these default things, right? Okay. The next one is what? Is discount percent. All right, hit enter key. So there's our discount percent. Here's the next one. Come down here, label 3, And I'm going to do discount amount. I think these all had colons. I forgot to put a colon at the end, kind of in the example file. And then also here, so I'll select that one, and here I'm going to just put total. And a colon. Got that one. I'll go back and fix these real quick. So you can always come back, click it again. Fix that one. Click this again. Okay, fix that one. Okay, so now you got that. You got 4 different things. Okay, let's see what the this PowerPoint kind of tells you to do. I'll probably start doing things different than what it's saying. So labels, text boxes, buttons. Oh yeah, I didn't drag the buttons over there. Let me drag some buttons over there. So we have a button for, got a button for calculate and a button for exit, right? So let's grab a button. And grab another button. Could have cut. So, you know, you do things different ways with that, all right? Okay. Highlighted the first one, so come over here, and the text is button 1. We don't want to leave button 1 there, okay? We want the text to be calculate, C-A-L, calculate, all right? And then this other button, and we go make this bigger, okay? We can make this bigger. And this other one, we want exit. So we come down here to, did I blow by it? I probably ran right by it, didn't I? Text, text, text. There we go, button 2. We want to be exit. Okay. Like I said, you can make these bigger. And they help you line things up too, right? Once you reach a certain spot, it'll say, yep, that's the same as that one. So you got calculate and exit now, right? Probably put them a little closer together. All right, so you got your 2 buttons, you got 4 labels, you got 4 fields here. Let's see what this said next here on this PowerPoint. All right, this window ain't dragging for me. There we go. Okay, buttons, we got that. All right, add a control. We're doing all this. We adjusted. Okay, we didn't do the tab order. Okay. So first thing I just want to do, so let's just kind of run this, okay? So now we got this. There is code behind this. I mean, there's really nothing behind this yet, right? But this is the form. This is the design form. And obviously, you see the little asterisk up here, right? So I'm just going to hit save here. And you don't necessarily have to create this one. This is just for presentation purposes. We're going to be doing more in the future, right? So I click on this, and hopefully this is all going to work. There you go. So here's, and this is what we'll be doing a lot in this course. We'll be building these different WinForms app that pop up, you know, when you execute them. Under data, a bunch of calculations, different things will happen in the background, right? Users don't see that, but this is the GUI, right? This is the front end for, you know, and then the back end you'll have your C# code, right? Users won't see all that, right? They're just going to see a screen. You enter data, you hit calculate. This is all going to happen within our C# code, right? Okay, so close that. Let's see what's the next thing we have to do here. I think I can lasso this. Let me see. Where's tab order? I might actually have to look at this. So it's been like over a year since I've taught this class, and then plus new features on this editor. Okay, for tab order, we want to go up to view. Go up to view and go down to tab order. And this is all the different tab orders. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So maybe you want this to be, you know, by default, it's going to put one thing on the labels too. Maybe you want this to be different, right? So you could change this to a 1, change that to a 2. That'd be the first one. 1, 2. This would be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, and I think we come back up here to, I don't know what I'm doing on that. View. That's bizarre. Let me save this for one thing. It's probably because I got all these big fonts and it ain't helping me on this. So I'm going to click tab order and that'll go away. Now if I bring this thing up, okay. So here if I hit tab, it's going to go, it's ignoring the labels, but it's going to go from this one to that one, to that one, to that one. Then it's going to go to the calculate button, then the exit button. Okay. So, but there's different tab orders. So here, let's just, real quick, let's just go and play with that a little bit more here. This is really kind of frustrating me a little bit. Tab order. So let's just, for the heck of it here. So, can you put a 0 there? Let me just leave that the way it was. So here you could actually change this to 5 and this one to a different number. If I click on this, I should be able to click on this over here to actually as well. Which one am I at? So I kind of changed some things around here. I got 8 here, 7 here. This one's 1. Okay, I'm just playing around here. And once again, so now if I hit tab, it jumped from here to here because it all depends on the order. You can have any kind of order you want. Okay. I need to spend some time myself on this, to be honest with you. So I will work on that a little bit so that next time that it will go a little smoother. All right. What else we want to do here on this? So like certain things here. So like when we do, we put in some information, we put some data in here, like the total, we don't want this to be a field that you can edit, right? The total would be a field that's generated. You shouldn't be able to even go in there, right? So one way to handle this is like here on this, click this, you come back down here and there's a read only false. You change this to read only true, right? So this will be a calculated field, right? You put data, once you calculate everything, once we have, code behind that, we could put in the numbers, hit calculate, it'll populate a value in here, right? But you can't edit it, right? Actually, you can even disable it, but you can't put anything in there. It's read only. But it's still got the cursor. You can actually disable that as well. So we'll look at that a lot more The other thing I really wanted to show here. So before we kind of did the view for the tab order stuff, if you go into here and you click on each one of these, right, it has a tab index. You can change the tab index, right? So that one was 1. So, change this one to 2. Change this one to 3 down here, right? Maybe you don't want anything here at all, right? So that's another option. One thing I do want to mention here is when we're changing things, things can be changed in different places here. See this? You got asterisk here, asterisk here. So make sure you do file, save all when you're doing things. And like I said, this is just for presentation purposes. But eventually you're going to be building these things. Okay, so let's see. We did that. We looked at read only. We had tab index. We also could do like a text align. So we can align text as well, right? You can choose, like for the labels, you can choose different fonts, font colors, right? All kinds of different things, anything, you can imagine, right? So here's your text align. This says top left. So you got different choices for that, right? The other thing is shortcut keys. I want to show you that. Actually, it's really called an access key. So let me show that real quick here. So let's look at the form. So here you'll see these things like underlined, that underlined S there, right? And subtotal. So if we go over here on this, on the subtotal here, and I click, we go back to the text, right? I'm getting too far ahead here on this. Go back to the text for this one. There's subtotal. If you put an ampersand here first, hit enter, you'll see now you've got that little underline under the S, just like you've seen on the presentation video, the presentation, PowerPoint. Now, if I bring this up, hopefully this is going to work. So if, so I'm down here, if I hit Alt S, it's actually going to go. It actually went there, even though you don't know it did. It put focus in there. So here, I don't know what happened to my little ampersand. It's because I didn't save it. I don't know. So this is, it's an access key. So if I hit Alt S, you don't see it, but it actually goes and puts, focus right there. So you can use access keys to do certain things. You do, and if you do it right, we can do it for the exit and that, where you actually do that. It'll actually initiate an exit, right? You can use those keys to like calculate, to do an exit. A little different with a label, but you can do it where it's going to have a little underline under the C here, and you do an Alt C, and it'll execute the calculate, or do an Alt and put it under the X there on the exit, and then it'll actually do that. So that's called an access key. All right. All right. So that's all I'm going to really cover right here on this. I just want to go ahead and get through the written test here real quick. I'm sure that there's some things that we may not have covered, but most of what's kind of in this presentation, I think we covered what we kind of need to. I do want to show you sometimes you can actually, here I'll show you this, you can lasso things, and then you can actually move things I'm using my right arrow key to move something from one side to another side, right? It's got that little lasso key, right? So the little lasso, I'm just basically holding down my left mouse. I'm selecting this. I'm letting go. And now I can just, so it's just going to move those. The labels are going to stay there, and it's just going to move those. So just another tool you can use for format, for formatting, for design purposes. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and I want to get through that written test. We're going to have plenty of opportunity to do a lot more of window forms designed. I think I'll leave this up in case we want to look at a few things. All right. So I'm going to go out to our course. Okay, I'm going to go out here to our coursework. And it's thinking. Usually it's pretty instantaneous, but not now. So we have our different assignments that are due. I don't know why it's not showing those assignments up here, but that's okay. Am I still a student view? All right. I think something's a little messed up with their configuration and to bleeding over because this is like this is my instructor view. But okay, so we're doing the written test here. So I'm going to do this written test here. You're not going to see all these. Okay. I need to fix this right now because I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do unless I'm in unless I'm in a student view. So I'm going to have to fix this real quick. Okay. So if anybody wants to follow along here, best to follow along here. So we're going to start this written test. Click on this written test down here, Chapter 2 written test. Here's our questions. Okay. All right, so here, the first one. So what property of a form sets the title that's displayed in the form's title bar, right? So if we go over here, this is what kind of the first thing I did was up here. If I click on right here on this one, right? This is basically your form. So if you came down here on this is the form, so you can tell what property it's using. Whenever you click on these things, now you know your label one, right? And actually these, we need to change these. We should give these descriptive names. Okay, they don't have descriptive names. Same with these, should have descriptive names. Text box doesn't work. You need to describe what it is. You get a bunch of stuff in here. You don't know which one's text box 1, 2, 3, right? But I didn't go that far. But here, if I just click on here, this will click on the whole form kind of thing. And as you can see, invoice total is the text field, right? So we're going to choose text here, okay? To select 2 or more controls, you can, okay? So select 2 or more controls. Let's look at this, right? Can we drag an outline around the controls while you're holding down the Alt key? Hold down the Control key while you click on them, right? Hold down the Shift key while you click on them, or hold down either the Shift key while you click on them, right? So we kind of did that a little bit, I guess, right? So you can hold down either the Shift to select 2 or more controls. You can. I would say the answer would be hold down either the Shift key. Hold down either the Shift key while you click on them. Hold down either the Shift or Control key while you click on them. Okay, third one is what? To change the file name of a form. Okay. On a project, so when you change the file name for a form, project, or solution, you use the what? Form designer, so solution explorer, the toolbox, or the code editor. So let's go look at here. So in, I don't know how this got all the way over there. So in here, actually, this is our name here. Okay. You can rename it. So you actually do this within, Solution Explorer. Okay. So which control do you use to allow a user to enter some text? To enter some text. So a label doesn't enter text, a button doesn't, a read-only text box isn't. The only one that's going to be good is what? A text box, right? That's what we had, those different text boxes that we put on the screen. So two properties that are common to both forms and controls are what? Forms and controls are what? So forms have names. Forms have names and controls have names. Forms have text properties, right? So I'd say it would be name and text properties. We already did that, right? To customize the way Visual Studio works, what command do you use to select from the tools menu? To customize. Kind of already did this, right? A little bit. We selected what? We didn't do customize don't exist. Options, right? You want to change the font, whatever, use options, right? To prevent a control from receiving focus when the user presses the tab key, which of the control properties should you set to false? So, I mean, I didn't mention this because we didn't talk about tab stops here at all, I don't think. So the answer is tab stop. I was just checking to make sure. To prevent a control from receiving focus, it's going to be tab stop. To create a new Visual Studio project, what do you select from the new project dialog box to specify? So, we've created new projects, right? So what do you specify? It's not a solution, right? It's not even a project, right? So to create a new visual project, you create it from something else. You create it from a template, right? So when you run a form after you've used the form designer to design it, but haven't added any code to it, the buttons don't cause anything to happen, but otherwise the form works. The form is displayed, but nothing works. The form can be compiled, but does not display. Or the form works, but none of the controls work. Buttons don't cause anything to happen. The form works, but none of the controls work. Well, I'm thinking that we're here. Let me think through this, though. All right. I mean, we're doing this, right? The buttons don't cause anything to happen, but otherwise the form works. The buttons don't cause anything to happen, but otherwise form works. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. Access keys let the user activate a control by access keys by pressing the Alt and Control. So kind of, this is the last thing we kind of did before we started this test, right? We used that little ampersand before the letter So you can press Alt plus another key, right? And that'll activate a control. We didn't really do the complete solution on that. We will in the future. What is the name of the Visual Studio window that contains controls that you can drag onto a form? That was one of those proper, right? We had to change the view of certain things, right? The toolbox has all the forms under common controls, right? You got different ones you can choose from. A lot of stuff we do is going to be under common controls. So that's that. In Visual Studio, what command of the Tools menu can you use to change the development settings that affect the way the menu and toolbars work? Now, this one here, I think is kind of I don't want to say it's a trick question, but I think that this is, you kind of wouldn't want to think options here, but I really think that this is kind of going to be import and export. So, yeah, what command of the toolbar can change the development settings, the way the menu and toolbars work, and actually it is import and export settings. The tab order determines the order in which the tab and the form designer windows are displayed. The user must enter data into the controls on the form. The controls are displayed on the form. The controls on the form receive focus when the user presses the tab key. That kind of sounds correct, doesn't it? The controls on the form receive focus when they press. Yeah. All right. When you align or size a group of selected controls, the changes are made relative to. When you align or size a group of selected controls, changes are made relative to the. I would say, because that doesn't even make sense. I think on this one, I'm going to say primary control. What form property do you use to activate a button when the user presses the enter key? What form property do you activate the button when the user presses the enter key? Well, I know it would sound like the enter button property, but I believe it's going to be the accept button property. To align two or more controls after you've selected, you can use, when you align two or more. So that was one we really didn't do much with. Both the control layout, no. It'd be both. I think it's going to be. I think it's the format menu commands. We just didn't do any of that, and the layout toolbar buttons. So what would you set the text property of a label to if you want the label to appear as shown below, with the letter N as an access key? So this is something we kind of did right there at the end, right? We put the ampersand right before the letter, right? So the only one that has an ampersand is the second one. So which key can you use to press to activate the button that's set by the cancel button property on the form? Cancel button, huh? Which key can user press to activate a button that's set by the cancel button property on the form? Wouldn't be enter. It ain't gonna be delete. Space bar, no. Space bar, it's not gonna. Yeah, it's gonna be. I'm gonna go with exe, just like other things. Which property of a text box lets you prevent the user from entering data into a control? So I know that that does. I'm kind of wondering about, I would think kind of disabled would as well. Prevents the user from entering data into a control. I think disabled is going to be a little different. I did the read only. We know that kind of worked. Okay, so I'm going with that. The text property of a control determines. The text property of a control determines the text that's displayed in the control, the text that you can use to refer, the text property, the name of the control, the text that's displayed on the form, right? The text that's displayed in the control. Text property of the control. So it's, it's just the text that's displayed in the control, right? The text that's displayed in the control. To create an access key that will move the focus to a text box, you set the access key in the text property of the text box of the label immediately before the text box. So I think that that's going to be what? I think that's going to be set the access key to the text box of the label, right? To create an access key that will move focus to the text box, you set the access key to the text property of the label immediately before the text box. All right, we'll see how we did. I can see there's things that I need to spend a little time on myself because it's just been a while. All right, submit this written test. Let's see what happens here. Hopefully we passed. Ooh, I didn't actually thought I was going to 100, but all right. So there you go. If you just kind of watch that video, some of those might be in different order, depending on, I think some of them might be in a different order, so you might have to work through that a little bit. But if you go ahead and watch this video and just kind of select everything, and there you go, you've got your written tests submitted, and you just do this, and you're going to be counted as present for the week, right? That's all you really have to do. So. Okay, so that's all I have. What I have left to do for you guys, I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and record a video on the console app, that third one. I'm going to record a video, and so I'm going to post this video out in the playlist, and then after that, it'll be later. It may actually even be, let's just say by sometime tomorrow. I might get it done today. I have some other things I have to do, but I might be able to get it done today, so it'll either be later today or tomorrow. I'll have that lab 3 of the first assignment out there. So that's all I have. Please let me know if you have any questions. Please, if you haven't gotten your environment set up, get that set up. If you haven't sent me your GitHub username, please do that. And if you have any questions about anything else, if you need help with any of the labs, please let me know. I'm here to help you. So thanks and have a great day.